everyone. Welcome. Thanks for sharing again what we shared about practice, and we're going to dive in to a discussion now a little bit. Turn it away from what we just did, go a new direction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the definition of yoga. We all came here, likely, myself included, even as a facilitator, came here to dive deeper into what this practice really means. So take a second, more than a second actually, take a few moments, and just think of that question. How would you define yoga? Once you've got your thoughts flowing, just do a little free write and take a minute or two. Let the thoughts spill out on the paper, and we'll stop in a moment or two. Go ahead. Stream of consciousness. What does yoga mean? What's the definition? Go ahead and begin. Okay, great. I see that pencils are slowing. Just start to wrap up the thought that you've got at this moment, that last sentence. Thank you. Now go ahead and turn to the person next to you, and if there's odd numbers, just kind of get a little group of 3 going. And either by reading what you wrote or by summarizing it, paraphrasing it, share what you think. What does yoga mean to you? What's your definition of yoga? Questions? Okay, go ahead and begin. Great, last person that needs to share, go ahead and either start or wrap up. Thank you. Okay, let's go back individually again, and based on what you wrote, what you talked about, what started to come up, in that discussion in your own mind, see if you can come up with one word. It might be hard for some of you, easier for others. Just one word that you think defines your yoga practice or a yoga practice. And just go with what you think of now. Things can always evolve. Okay, go ahead and begin. All right, great. So let's talk about all those. Give me some of those words. I'm going to write them down and we'll put them up so we can see them as we keep going. Okay, awesome. Peace. Got it. Yeah. Love it. Spirit. Okay, connection. Cool. Stillness. Interesting. Love it. Thanks for sharing, guys. So I'm going to post these up behind us. We can refer to them again as we continue to talk. What are some of the things that these words have in common? Things you notice about them, or don't notice about them for that matter. Yeah, they all are kind of internal, aren't they? Mm-hmm. What else? Okay, great. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, nothing on this page has anything to do with the physical shape in the body. Okay? No one mentioned the time that they finally held a crow pose, or the time that they never fell out of tree, or whatever it may be. No one spoke to a bodily sensation in a shape. And that's amazing, because I think it's true to many of our hearts here in the Lifepower tradition that poses are really there to aid us in our practice of yoga, right? Johnny would say that we use the shapes to get into our bodies. They're really just a tool for us to feel, to breathe, and to be. Yeah, they speak to the way that we can start to transform. And we can start to feel all of these things, whether we're on our mats or off of our mats, more at home in our own bodies. Love it. So we've talked a little bit in the past, 2 days that we've been going about some of the history of yoga and where it's come from. And we're going to keep that going right now and dive a little deeper. These are some of the ways we've defined yoga so far, and they're all very true. They're truths to us. Let's examine it more. So one of the sages that we've talked about is Patanjali. I've got in my hands a translation of his Yoga Sutras. We know that he took a lot of the oral speaking, oral tradition of the ways that we practice yoga, and that he did this around 200 to 400 BCE. So it's been some time. And he's got these terse little verses here that speak to what is a yoga practice, how do we practice yoga. And in it, he gives us his definition, and it's one that's been used in so many traditions to define what the yoga practice is. Just before we start, has any, just out of curiosity, you don't have to share it. If you want to share it, you can. Has anyone heard that sutra before? Okay, cool. So it'll be new to us. So I have a phrase recorded here. And it goes like this. Yoga Sutra 1.2. Yoga, Chitta, Vritti, Nirodha. No one wrote it, and that's okay. So what does this mean? It's in Sanskrit. What are some ways that you've heard yoga defined before? You have to take that word. Different than this, if you were to actually translate the word yoga into English. Yeah, to yoke or to bind, unity, right? To bring together. Okay, so I'm going to jot down unity. How about chitta? Has anyone heard that Sanskrit word before? No? So chitta has to do with the mind. And you can think about it as our physical minds. You can think about it as the kind of the sleeping or the unconscious mind. Just any way that we process sensation in the body, that we feel and hear our thoughts. So the way that we take in information. Okay, so we've got unity, we got the mind. How about vritti? Kind of an edgy, spicy word to say, right? Okay, so a vritti is like a fluctuation, an agitation. Literally, the word often translates to whirlpool. So if you imagine a whirlpool, things are swirling, okay? So these are the fluctuations. Okay, or the agitations, shaking things up. And then Nirodha translates to cease. Okay, so if we put all of these things together, we've got yoga as unity, connection, kind of binding. So we get there by ceasing the fluctuations of our mind. So yoga is the practice of releasing, of steadying, of finding some stillness. One of you have that up there in our mind. And, before I go any further, anything come up for you? Ways it connects to, your definitions or even some of the experiences that you wrote down that were longer than your one word. Yeah, okay, awesome. So you feel a connection to this because when you're taking a yoga class, you often feel like your mind is more still. Great, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so really this Patanjali's definition really speaks to the barriers our own mind puts in front of us that kind of stop us from feeling the unity, from feeling the peace or the connection or the stillness. And our minds, I'll put this up too, so we can kind of refer back to it. Our minds often do prevent us from feeling at home in our own skin, right? It's a battle with kind of that force within. And there's sometimes, different metaphors you might hear used that kind of speak to the ceasing of the fluctuations and how when we do it, we can find that unity. We can see more clearly. One of the ones that I use in my yoga classes a lot is a snow globe. And that when you sit on your mat, when you step into a studio, wherever you are practicing, even if it's the first moment that you woke up, oftentimes your body and your mind is somewhat like a snow globe that someone just shook. And now there's glitter and fluff and white particles and so much stuff swirling that you can't even see what the figure is within that snow globe. And then you start to move. You start to breathe and observe your body and kind of feel what's happening. And even though your body gets more energized, more heated, you can get this sense that the stuff in the snow globe is slowly starting to fall down, become still, and then you can see that figure within. And other people use the metaphor of like seeing at the bottom of a lake. There's a lot of sediment, sand, things at the bottom of the lake. So if there's boats churning up the surface and people jumping in and wind creating ripples, the sediment at the bottom and just the fluctuation of the water on top prevents us from seeing below. But once we still that water, remove all the different agitators, we can see below the surface. And it's the same here to ourselves. When we start to detach from that tight grip we try to hold on things, when we start to kind of release all the different waves, we can start to see more clearly within ourselves. Just a few weeks ago, a writer, I guess you could call her, Emily McDowell. She writes. She's actually pretty famous for empathy cards. We'll speak about these at another time. But she put out a quote a few weeks ago, and as soon as I came about this lecture, I immediately thought of her words. And she says this: finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last year's coat pocket. You are also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself. It's an unlearning, an excavation, a remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. Here it is. From the words of a woman in 2019, from the words of a man in 200 BCE. Yoga practice is the stilling of the fluctuations, the releasing of all these vrittis or conditions or inaccurate conclusions or opinions or judgments, so that we can unbecome, we can unlearn. So tell me, first by writing it down. I'll take just a moment to do that. Let me pop Emily up here too. Tell me, what are some of your common agitations? Or common maybe is not the best word. Whatever agitations come to mind. Jot them down. What are some of the things that you feel that get your mind going, or whether they're experiences or occurrences, things that happen that you feel like really get your mind stirred up. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So let's share some of those. What are some of the things that get you going? Yeah, you're feeling too busy. I can relate. Yeah, you feel like the world is piling up on you. Okay, jealousy. Yeah. Feeling anxious. Absolutely. Yeah. All of these agitations, they've got some stuff in common. I'll give you an example of one of mine. All of those are great. Thank you for sharing them. One of my agitations that I've just started to really kind of dive deeper into with our work is with my 5-year-old son. He and I are very alike. And we tend to butt heads, and I tend to lose my patience with him a little quicker. And I've started to realize that the agitation I feel kind of comes down to two things. I feel frustrated that he's not listening. I feel worried that I'm doing something wrong. And I feel angry that my time isn't being used the way I want it. That when he demands 10 things in a row and I get interrupted, even if it's just doing the dishes. I'm interrupted doing the dishes, which I don't even like doing anyway. I somehow get angry and wish I was doing the dishes, right? So I feel, all these agitations with him. And it speaks exactly to what you guys shared too. Feeling busy, feeling anxious, getting jealous. What are some of the underlying sentiments here? Is there a word that we could use and replace all of what we just said? Use that word instead. Okay, maybe. How about this? Let me ask you this. Many studies have shown, and you might even know just from your own experience personally or with people you're close to, what's like the main driver of addiction? Yeah. So often people become addicted to a substance. Sure, certainly because there are some chemical properties in that substance that create that holding on. But they often begin because they're filling a void. They're afraid to connect. They don't know how to connect. And so instead they connect with their substance. There's a word I used in there. Yeah, afraid. Fear, guys. We're freaking afraid. I'm afraid in those interactions and reactions on my part with my son that I'm not a good enough parent. I'm afraid that I'm not using my time well, and time is valuable, right? I want to spend it with him doing things that are fun, not yelling. I want to spend it with him, I want to get the stuff done around the house that I have to do so that I can do more quality things with him or with myself or with my loved ones, right? Fear is like this. It's the frickin' Tafiti of Vrictis. Do you guys know Moana? I have little kids. Even if you don't have little kids, don't be ashamed. It's a great movie. One of my faves. Can someone share with me? What's the heart of Tafiti? Okay, yeah, exactly. So in the movie, in the island, there's a legend, a Polynesian legend, that the island of Tafiti has a heart. There's a little amulet or crystal, and the demigod Maui goes and steals the heart of Tafiti out of the island. And as he does this, the island of Tafiti slowly fades away. It goes from being this lush, beautiful place